So for starters, on the control pack wiring, I kind of segregated out what we have here. So this is factory starter and harness for the original factory Coyote donor. So I'm probably going to need the power wire for the starter, and then maybe the trigger wire for the starter too might be in that bundle. So I don't want to completely remove anything until I know what I actually need and what I don't need. This is the factory Mustang starter cable. So probably all this is going to come off. But again, I don't want to completely remove anything until I know what I'm needing for sure. And then we have the factory Mustang ground. This is the factory battery terminal for the positive. And then down here we have the remote battery. So on top of doing all the wiring stuff, we have the project of relocating the battery to the trunk. So we're going to have connections here as if there was a battery, but the battery itself will be moved. So just kind of getting a lay of the land of all this. This is all hopefully going to make a lot more sense once we get deeper into the control pack and figure out exactly what needs to go where. So I have the control pack ECU sitting right here, and half of the control pack wiring goes onto the engine itself. And this is just like a factory harness, so it plugs into coils and plugs into injectors and all the things. So that should be pretty self-explanatory. Either you don't have one and you just need to lay it out and do all your connectors, or you have one and you need to remove it and swap the harnesses. If you have depending on where you buy your control pack from, if you have a F-150 engine, which is what this is, the firing order may be different compared to the Mustang ECU. So if you have a no start condition, crank no start, then that may be worth doing research and figuring out if you need to. Basically, you just need to repin a couple one of the couple pins over here to change the firing order. Hopefully we're not going to get into that, but we'll find out later. And then we're going to have the main bulk of the, what I'm going to call the body harness side. This is going to go inside the car through a grommet. We're going to have an OBD2 connector, and we're going to have a pedal connector. That should be all that's on this guy. So that's nice and long. So that will get routed. Eventually we'll get routed through the firewall. The rest of the stuff here is all labeled, which is nice. This is our starter trigger wire. So we may not run this all the way to the starter itself. We may pick up and just splice into the starter wiring on the in that harness for the original donor motor. So we'll find out how we want to do that. And then we have a mass airflow sensor, which we currently don't have for this car. So we'll have to get that sorted out. And then this is automatic stuff, I guess. Upshift. Oh, this is interior stuff too. Okay. So this is if you're doing 6R80 with shifter commands. You got upshift. Clutch switch, manual transmission only. So this is kind of a generic thing. So we probably won't need upshift or shift common. I don't know. We'll do some figuring out what we need on this guy. But we got a lot of loom here, so that probably one of these is going to go. I don't know. We'll figure that out. I don't know that answer yet. And then I've already got my alternator plugged in, and for some reason this harness is like 8 feet long. So I may end up also cutting this guy down to where we just don't have to deal with that, because that's ridiculous. And that's, yeah. So that we just bundled that up just so it wouldn't drag the ground going on the trailer. But So I'm going to need an actual battery cable from the alternator to my battery. And then I'm going to need a battery cable to the starter as well. So both of those, I believe, are integrated in this guy. So so this connector is just to turn the alternator on as part of the control pack. And then we need to actually have a ability to carry the power out of the alternator to the battery. So that's kind of the general layout. And once I get a little bit more into specifics, we will continue this video. My apologies, I didn't even talk about this side. So this is the other connector. That's your main powers and grounds going into the new little fuse box. So actually, it's called little fuse. That's funny. And then we'll have a main power terminal as well. That's where all the power goes into the fuse box. Is here, goes through its own mega fuse and then distributed across all the different circuits. So we'll have to also make a little wire from here to our battery. And then there'll be a couple connections here. Battery ground, fan power, and fuel pump power. So those will have to get integrated in to their respective circuits. So not a big deal, but just I totally forgot to mention this other side. All right, getting into a little bit of the wiring project. I've got the Coyote fuse box mounted over here. The remote power battery will get run back through the fender once I put a terminal on it. And then I started cleaning up the engine starter harness for the 15 or the Gen 2. And I'm left with my two battery cables. One's going to go to the starter, one's going to go to the alternator. And then the big battery ground, which also needs to go to the frame. And then I've got the two wires for the AC clutch. I think we're going to end up running the original compressor, so I probably don't need these, but I went ahead and left them labeled for now. And then this is my starter wire, which is going to go back to the starter for the trigger. So eventually this guy and this guy will get married together. And I don't want to do that until I figure out exact routing of how things are going to get laid out, because I don't want to make it connected and then it be too short. So that's pretty much as far as I'm going to go with this part at the moment. And then I will start worrying about laying out some of the other stuff. I did route the connector from the fuse box, routes under the air box, and has the connector here. And then that harness just runs along the frame or under the core support. And then I've got my 3 wires here, which are my battery ground, my fuel pump, and my fans. So I'm unclear of if this is providing battery ground or needs to be grounded, so I'm probably just going to ground it just to be sure. And then I'll have, so coming off my fan, I will have this connected to my fan wire eventually. And like I said, those are all just kind of sitting in here until I figure out finalization on how stuff's going to be laid out. And then still got to deal with all this stuff here. I made a bracket for the PCM to mount against the firewall. And then I got the harness pulled down out of the way of the hood. So we're in good shape of all that. And then this guy is running back here. This is my OBD2 port and my pedal. So at some point those will have to get inserted into the cabin. Haven't figured out the exact routing of that yet either, so for now it's just out of the way. So we're going to probably start focusing on this stuff next and figuring out exact routing of things. The alternator wire could have been piggybacked in the same harness because this is part of that same harness, but I figured it probably is just as easy to just cut the ends of it off of that and then run my new one since it's already set up for that. So I may have regretted that decision, but we'll see. But so that'll get routed down and back across. No big deal. And yeah, we're moving right along. Okay, so the next thing I need to work on is my interior harness, which is going to go to the OBD2 port and the throttle position, throttle pedal. Both these need to go inside the car. So the wire loom is maybe a little bit bigger than a 1/2 inch diameter. So it's going to take quite a sizable grommet to go through. So what I'm thinking I might do is drill out this hole where the throttle cable used to be. So that way I don't have to build a plate just to try to seal this hole up, since we aren't going to be using a throttle cable anymore. And one of those wires is a throttle wire, so might as well just go through where the throttle used to go through. So it'll be a little bit tricky to drill out on top of the firewall here, just because of the holes that are in place. You know, it's maybe a 1/2 inch hole flanked by 2 little holes, so it'll be a little tricky to drill that out, but that's kind of my game plan at the moment. And then we can either route this particular loom, we can either route back and across and then in, or we can route across and then back and then in. Either way, it doesn't really matter. So whichever way it looks more natural. And so I'm going to try to find a grommet that'll fit this, fit whatever hole I drill out as well. Well, not the prettiest job, but that'll get the job done. I will have to add a little bit of RTV or Pookie or something on the little bit of holes that are remaining, but and I probably will do just a little bit around the harness as well, just to make sure it doesn't leak. The problem now is my connectors are quite a bit larger than the hole, so I will have to depin this connector, and I will have to depin the throttle connector as well, and then we'll pass the wires through, and then we'll repin them on the other side. So I got both connectors fully depinned, so we'll get these inserted into the firewall, and hopefully we can get both these looms in side by side. That would be nice. So I'm going to take a quick look at routing before I actually push them in, just so I can, if there's anything I want to, depending on which direction I go, I can also see if there's anything I want to go under or over or whatever before I make the permanent installation. Well, I ended up wrapping masking tape around the wires just to go ahead and get them a little bit smoother going into the firewall. And I pulled the conduit off of the smaller side, and then did masking tape just to get them all bundled together. And then so now we can get the conduit put back on it and get the connectors rebuilt. Alright, we got the wiring done, wiring run I should say. I had to cut a small piece of the rubber out of the way for this guy, and then we're going to put we bought this conversion bracket. This is from Scram Speed, and that'll convert our bolt holes to drive-by-wire bolts. We'll get this guy installed with the factory hardware, and then we'll get the pedal put on after that. So the conversion bracket was a success, and we got the pedal bolted on. You don't get to use the top right bolt up here. Doesn't exist on the bracket, probably just due to space limitations and trying to make it as universal as possible. But no big deal there. We're pretty good. The depth is about right where brake pedal needs to be, for safety, needs to be slightly forward of the gas pedal, and it is just slightly forward. So we're in pretty good shape there. And at some point I will wrap up these harnesses and get them tucked out of the way, and then we'll figure out where we want to mount the OBD2 port, if at all. I mean, we may just kind of tuck it in the carpet or something, who knows. But pretty good overall. getting the OBD2 is just sitting up here, tucked out of the way for now. This is the factory original OBD2 port for the car, and went ahead and just got all the harnesses tucked out of the way as best I could. We're going to go ahead and wrap up on this part of the video for now. We will dig into the rest of the control pack wiring, but this video is already getting kind of long, so I'm going to move the other part into another video, and we'll put a link in the video as well for here, just so you can continue on with the build. But I appreciate y'all watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.